Welcome to the September 13th Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. We always ask that you add your name and the company you work for to the list of attendees, just so we have a general idea of who's been regularly attending these calls. And I'll pause here as we look at our usual agenda. We don't have a lightning talk scheduled, but if there is something that you want to add to this agenda that's not there, please chime in or tag it into the appropriate sections or the any other business section. So I'll pause if somebody wants to call something out right off the top. All right. On that basis, let's jump down and take a look at the end user issues that have come in the last week. Looks like there was a question about a Stack Overflow error due to different sizes of native stacks between OpenJ9 and Hotspot. Like that had been answered, so this may be closable. The rest of these, not as familiar with. Does anyone know of anything in here that needs some focus today? It looks like everything's got some discussion at least occurring. Is there anything older in this list that needs some discussion or needs some focus? We'll close this and we'll jump back to the agenda. This brings us to the 035 release. We're coming up on the milestone 2 date of September 26. Pete, do you have a state of where we're at with this release?
Well, we have too many issues. We need to move some of them out. Anything we don't think is going to get resolved. I think there may be some activity on some of the JIT issues. I think we're trying to get a few more fixes in, but and there's a couple that I still need to triage to see if they're regressions. They need to be moved out or more action.
So there's a number of these you said that are likely going to move out. Did want to ask about the async get call trace issues. It looked like there was some discussion on those and then they went quiet. Are they still getting attention or are they?
Is Toby on the call? Toby, do you know anything more about those?
I don't have any recent information. I know GAC's still looking at those. But yeah, nothing new from our last discussion on those.
Do we believe that they're going to get into this release?
Likely not. Yeah, my intention is to move them out to the next one.
So anything else, if we have a fix this week, and it's low risk, no problem. Next week starts to get more concerning as we approach milestone 2.
Agreed.
Daryl, I don't know if you have an idea of what fixes are in progress for all the user-raised issues. If we can move some more of them out. I know some of them moved already, but maybe we can move more of them out if we know we're not going to have anything in time.
Yeah, I think so. We've Henry's made some progress on a couple of those ones, maybe 2 or 3. We may have one other, but yeah, I'll go through the list and figure out what's not going to be able to make it.
Anything else we should talk about for the 035 release?
There is that blocker now. A failure showed up, and it does seem to be a regression from the last release. And I'm not certain, but it feels like it could be a JIT issue.
This one down at the bottom here.
Yeah.
Looks like you guys are fully have this in hand, though, or at least the start of the investigation in hand.
Yeah, it's just concerning to have a blocker because if we can't get it resolved, that could delay the release.
So we have some risks there. Turning to Java 19. Jack, why don't we start with the update on Loom? If you're on the call.
Yes, Dan. So for Loom, the stack walker changes have been taking slightly longer to review. It was opened last week and it's currently being reviewed by Toby. We're looking to have it completed this week. For JVMTI, this week we've discovered there was a potential issue in our previous implementation with synchronization. There could be failures if the target thread is a carrier thread, which have no continuation mounted to it. But in between our call to get VM thread, which retrieves the underlying J9 VM thread from a thread object, and the call to actually halt the J9 VM thread for inspection, if there is a mount operation that is being done by one of the virtual threads, that will break the return value. So we've added additional checks and synchronization to the code to correct that. With that being work in progress to be fixed, we have 15 remaining JVMTI work to be done. So I think that's 2 down from last week, and 5 are currently under review, so we're expecting those to be merged today or tomorrow, and 6 work in progress under BAPNeat, which is expected to be ready for review before end of week. So that gives us only 4 remaining ones that actually need to have more attention this week. In terms of the GC work,
sorry, before we move on, so do you believe that September 20 date is still accurate?
For now, we're looking with the current workload we have. We think September 20th would be a completion date. We're not exactly sure if the last few PRs would be ready fully for review, but it will still be open by then.
So that's not the target date, right? Completion means reviewed and merged.
Yeah. We're hoping to meet that deadline, but we might be a day or two after that.
So you were saying for the GC side of things?
Yeah, sorry. For the GC side of things, there were 6 PRs related to slot scanning from GC side. So far, 4 have been reviewed and merged. 1 is currently under review by Alec, and it's looking to they're getting to the point where they're just running the PR testing to make sure nothing breaks, and that leaves 1 last PR to be reviewed and merged before non-concurrent GC can be enabled. In terms of generational GC, I know they're having discussions within the team, so I'll leave that to either Lynn or Alec to discuss where they're at for that.
Yeah, so for, I guess, non-trivial GC policies that require non-concurrent and generational, we do have solution for the most important ones like opt-average pause, GenCon, and balance GC. For more kind of those less frequently used like metronome and concurrent scavenger, we're still discussing what the solution is. And but the for GenCon and balance GC, the changes are being merged almost as we speak. I'm hoping maybe by the end of tomorrow, or maybe at least at most maybe day after, GenCon changes and balance GC changes should be in. We understand what we need to do for Metro and concurrent scavenger, but still, there's like engineering dilemmas, but conceptually, I think we understand what you need to do.
So the core GC policies will be complete this week.
I hope so, yes.
So that's the 16th.
Yep.
And from the JIT side, Daryl have been doing quite a bit of testing on the changes to see if they break anything. We have discovered from last week there was a issue with register R16. We're not exactly sure what's the cause of it. It seems to crash the system at random places.
So just an update on that status. So we've picked up the latest set of changes from the VM, and things do look better than they did last week. On Z, we're able to run all the tests in a variety of different JIT modes successfully. x86 seems to be in the same position, at least on Linux. And Power is still, even with those changes, they're still seeing a corruption of the PTOC pointer somewhere outside of JIT code that we haven't been able to get to the bottom of yet. So Power is still having issues. Since x86 is now successful, we can do the work on AArch64 because things are much more stable. And I expect the ZPR has been merged, and x86 PR is open. I'm just going to have to push that through, get reviews going on that. And same thing with the, when we get to the bottom of the power problem, then we can push that one through as well. Not sure if that's going to be a JIT issue or not, though. We may just want to merge power, and but I'd rather wait until we did have a clean build with power before merging that, if possible.
Did I hear that AArch64 then has not yet started?
Right, it's a small amount of work for AArch64, so that will now happen. I expect it'll take about a day.
Do we have a target date to get these things reviewed by? And reviewed and merged and completed? Are we going to make that? The JVMTI functions had been our long poll item, with the 20th being the date we were targeting for that. Do we expect this to the JIT side of things to wrap up by the 20th?
I'm going to push the x86 one forward by the end of this week, get reviews done by the end of the week, and seeing how, depending on how AArch64 goes, maybe very early next week. We're somewhat thin on AArch64 resources at the moment due to other internal commitments, so I'll give that one a little bit longer. And
so
power.
So it sounds like that's not going to make that 20th date that we were treating as our long.
Well, early next week could be the 20th, but it's possible, but it's more risky. You're right.
Jack, the other area that wasn't mentioned was the testing. Has the testing transitioned to doing testing with all the combined pieces, VM, JIT, and GC?
We're currently testing with JIT enabled on most of our testing in locally. We're in the process of transitioning over to enabling JIT by default for virtual site functionality testing. For the GC one, we're just waiting for the PRs from Lin to be merged, and Lin will enable full GC except for concurrent on the testing. Right now, we're going through some known failures in Sanity OpenJDK and verifying that they have all been addressed, at least on the VM side.
So we still have a fairly large backlog of testing that has to occur there as well, is what I'm hearing. Is there anything else for Loom that you want to mention?
I don't think we currently have anything else. We will be looking to have more result by next week when GC will be ready.
Chen, do you have an update on Panama?
Yes, Dan. In terms of artwork works, so on Vim side, we still get the part 4 specific to the dispatcher and interpreter. Because this is the last part in our side, we expect we still take a little while to finish everything. I expect there's gonna be one week or two to finish code review and get merged. In terms of some general code, on things on Z, the code change already merged. Arc64, I hope it should be merged this week if there's no more comments out there. On x86, Daryl's already finished code changes on Linux and still working on Windows. Hopefully, the PR should be opening this week. Am I right? Correct, Daryl?
Yep.
So yeah, that's everything on my side.
When you said that part 4 is under review, are there additional JIT changes or other changes from other groups needed after that?
No, that's all about it. That's on Vim side.
And do you expect that part 4 piece to be complete by that 20th date that we have as our long poll?
Well, I expect if there's no more comments and no more issues out there, I expect it should be finish the piece for that.
All right, thanks, Jen. So if I look at our tentative dates that we had put up around a potential post-35 release for this, we have been talking October the 2nd. Looking at the amount of work and things that need to get in there, that date doesn't seem realistic to me. Has there been further discussions around what a realistic date would be, or further look at when we would be able to get this released?
So in terms of Loom, I think we need to get to a point where we can run all the OpenJDK tests. So we'll need the stock worker code in, we'll need GC support. Once we can run all the tests, that is going to determine how much more work we have left. Currently, that's one of the big unknowns in terms of the virtual threading support. Likewise, we're going to have to do something similar for the JVMTI support. So we're working with LAN to enable testing some of the OpenJDK hotspot tests for JVMTI. So we'll have to, do the same process there. The result of that is going to determine how much more we have left to do. For Project Panama, I believe Chang has been running tests, the OpenJDK tests, or I think he's written a whole bunch of tests as well. So we have more clarity as to where we are in terms of testing status there. So I think for Panama, it's mostly just completing the work. I
Yeah,
don't
I remember
expect.
running most of the test, majority of the test,
Yeah.
our test and JTRAC test. I think it's most of platform independent issues should be fixed. Probably that's some minor issue, but not big deal.
Yeah, so I think most of the uncertainty is on the Loom side, and I think we need to wait for those two big features, so Stackwalker and GC support, to be in before we can start to address some of that. So, given today's schedule, I feel like the Stackwalker code should be in by the end of the week, and it sounds like we'll be able to run up throughput by the end of the week. So I think by next Tuesday, we should be able to outline a more definitive plan.
And I want to add on the basically the JVMTI hotspot JVMTI serviceability test. It needs the native test library, which is from the hotspot. We do not have that code in our extension repo. So now we're basically kind of blocked. I think Peter was asking if Kiss can see if we can remove some of the dependencies from hotspot, but we're not sure at this point whether those tests can be enabled in OpenJ9.
So it sounds like we can't enable those tests. We're going to have to write some tests there, so that's going to push that timeline out even further. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Anything else we want to say around Java 19? All right, then we'll move to the next piece of our agenda. Do we have an update around adopt? Skip over that. Adam, is there an update on the infrastructure?
Not much to say. Still working on the Windows new machines. Still having the same issues, so we're trying various things. Trying to resolve that, but we're kind of hitting a wall. I'd like to bring in Dev to help, but I'm not quite sure how.
What's the issue you're running into?
So the compiles intermittently fail, and it just says failing to find files. Some of them are generated files, but some of them are not generated files, and it always fails on a different file. It's hard to. It's intermittent as well. So.
Run into these kinds of things in the past where files weren't getting synced fast enough.
Just you're talking about Windows builds, Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see strange things happening sometimes, just local builds, whether it's not a generated file even. It just says can't find a file, you try again and it works. So I don't know what's up.
I don't really want to build in like a retry around the whole compile, but
how come the 2012 server machines seem to be stable?
That's a good question.
Are they different in some way?
Originally, the 2019 we tried was not different in terms of a machine point of view from what we can tell, other than the new OS. Then we did switch to a different type of IBM cloud infrastructure to see if that would help, but that didn't seem to help. We also were able to get single disk partition of adequate size to have everything on C drive to see if that would make a difference, because even the 2012 machines we compile on that like a secondary drive, even though all the OS and tools are on the C drive. That doesn't seem to have helped.
Are there changes in the type of the file system that we're running on?
I don't think so. It's NTFS. I don't know if the 2012, if the secondary drive is also NTFS. I would assume so.
Should we give up on trying to compile on 2019 and create a 2012 machine that has more disk so we can install the compilers we need? Or I think we don't need as many compilers as we used to because we've moved up some of our platforms. Maybe we should look at
the Visual Studio versions. Yeah.
Like we don't need 2013 anymore.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they take that much space.
Wasn't that the reason why we couldn't use, like, we wanted to move up to 2022, but we couldn't install that because we didn't have enough space. But now we don't need 2013, so we could delete that. Maybe that would give us enough space.
True. But we do want to move off the existing machines for several other reasons. We could try and make a new 2012, see if that has the same problem or if it's fine.
Yeah, it's just we're not making any progress on the 2019 machines.
Yeah.
And that's blocking the compiler move to 2022.
Right.
I was just checking the life cycle for Windows Server 2012. It seems like it goes out to 2026, so we have many years before we have to worry about getting rid of it.
Yeah. Maybe we'll try that.
Anything else there?
I think that's all for me.
Maybe we give up on 2019 and try 2022. Windows Server 2022. See if that is any better.
Right. Yeah, let's see what else is available, and we'll try some different OS versions. Yeah.
All right. Don't see Devin on the call, so we'll skip the CMake. Marius, is there an update on JIT server? See that you're off mute, but I don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So there is a report.
Sorry, it's very. I do hear you, but it's very hard to hear you. It's not very clear.
So we are working on ensuring persistence.
Sorry, I think we've lost you again.
Don't know what to do. So we are working on persistence for the JIT server LTK.
I have persistence for JIT server AOT.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks, Marius. Next microJIT meeting, I assume, would be the 22nd.
Yes.
Toby, is there an update on the CRIU support?
Nothing new to discuss this week.
Daryl, is there any update on the Mac M1 work?
No, other than we have to spend a bit of time going through some of the issues and figuring out what ones we need, what we can fix for 0.35. But I'll have to have a chat with Kono-san about some of those issues to see what we can contain.
There was a question about whether we can get Mac M1 out of early access, even though we only have non-compressed refs. So if we could take that out of early access and say it's production ready. So we've set the blocker label on some of the issues because they seem to be things that happen frequently.
Mm-hmm.
The other concern was our RAS support, if we have sufficient RAS support to be able to support it in the field.
Yeah, I had thought that the RAS that we were having some issues on some failures, but generally we could use the debugger to open core files. So I'll have to get to the bottom of what's going on there, get the complete story on that.
It does seem to, we do seem to get more failures on Mac M1 than we do on other platforms, but they are the ones that I've marked as blocker. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's going to be tight given what we were saying earlier about fixes that come in within the next week are probably okay, but things coming.
Well, if they're specific to Mac M1, there's not really much of a concern with putting the fix in. The worst case would be we don't take it out of early access.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, was getting fixes in is one thing, but flipping it out of early access that late becomes slightly riskier.
Yeah, we won't really have had enough time to go through all the testing to see if the issues are resolved.
Exactly. Anything else to discuss today? And thank you, everybody, and we'll have the next one of these on September 20th.
Thank you.